God is real. God is love. Why do I say this? How do I know this? Because I have experienced it. I have felt it. And I want to share what I have learned from this experience with you. To start, this is not about me. I am not special, or at least not any more special than any other existence. But in order to share the experience, I must include a little of myself. I went through a period of time where, despite my personal and professional success, having a beautiful family that I love, earning an MBA, and working my way up the corporate ladder to the position of vice president of a national company, something still didn't feel right. My spiritual self was void. I went on a quest to find spiritual satisfaction, experimenting with different religions and spiritual schools of thought, to include Christianity, Taoism, and even esoteric mysticism. Despite brief moments where I connected to some of these ideas, something always felt off and the void could never be truly fulfilled. I eventually became disillusioned and came to the dreary conclusion that there must not be a God. It was some time after giving up on all religions and the idea of God, that my entire worldview was changed after one brief, yet eternal experience. It was here where my faith and concept of God was forever reforged. As I was going to bed one day, alone in a hotel room, I lay down getting ready to go to sleep. This was a day like any other, but as I turned off all of the lights and laid my head, something indescribable happened. I experienced what I can only describe as the presence of God. I can't explain why it happened. Maybe I was dying. But something happened. I was fully awake and conscious of my surroundings, yet suddenly felt detached from everything. It was like I was present and not at the same time. Suddenly I started seeing a light manifest from above. I started getting a tingling feeling throughout my body. As the light approached, a feeling of warmth and comfort began to take over me. The closer the light, the more the feeling intensified. Suddenly I was engulfed by a feeling of pure bliss. I understood at the moment I was in God's presence. I could feel God's powerful love. And I immediately fell in love with God. I suddenly regretted ever doubting God's existence. I was embarrassed and ashamed. God was so beautiful, so perfect, so loving. I began to cry uncontrollably. I was crying because I loved God so much and felt so bad I had denied God. Though no words were spoken, I could feel and understood God's communication. God forgave me, God accepted me for who I am, God loved me. God loved me. And I loved and adored God. I will never be able to properly express how powerful and pure God's love is. I kept begging God to forgive me even though I knew God already had. I sobbed as I stood in God's perfection, in God's love, and cried because I felt I wasn't worthy of God's love. I suddenly recalled every bad thing I had done in life and felt ashamed. How could I tarnish such perfection with my presence? How could I stand anywhere near such pure, absolute love? I couldn't bring myself to even look at God anymore, because I was not worthy. Yet despite my own feelings, God's love and acceptance radiated and showered me. I understood God wanted me to go with it, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Although there was nothing more I ever wanted to do than to be engulfed in God's love, forever, I loved God too much to tarnish God with my presence. I could not bring myself any closer to God. I realized at that moment what heaven and hell are. I realized what Judgment Day is. And I realized I had just cast myself into hell, because I judged myself unworthy of God. What I learned and wanted to share with the world is that God is real. God is love. God loves all of us. God has nothing but love for us and will always accept us. Love. Don't fear God. Heaven is real, but not how we think. Heaven is an unexplainable paradise of absolute bliss and love. Heaven is being in God's embracing presence. It is experiencing the eternal bliss of God's penetrating, absolute love. It is a feeling that cannot be described, and the desire for it after experiencing it cannot be matched. Hell is also real. Hell is the absence of God's presence, distance from God's love. There are no pitchforks, no flames, no red monsters. If you truly understand heaven, you understand why this hell is much worse than any fire and brimstone. So live the best life you can live. Love yourself and love others. Do what you instinctively know is right and come to terms with mistakes of the past. You must learn to truly forgive yourself and others. Lastly, know that God is real. God is love. And God truly loves you.